Hunt Big Sales. Before we get started, I want to remind the audience to please feel free to submit questions via the question and answer chat box on your webinar tool. Our speaker will leave some time at the end of the presentation to answer the questions. Following the webinar, a survey will appear and you will have the opportunity to evaluate today's webinar. We thank you in advance for your feedback. At this time, I'm happy to introduce Tim Searcy. Tim is a master hunter for Hunt Big Sales. Tim has utilized the Hunt Big Sales process as the foundation of his success, having been personally responsible for more than $2 billion worldwide in new business. Tim combines his personal experience with the proven Hunt Big Sales process to empower companies looking to achieve explosive growth. Tim's clients are selling big deals into large companies, including UPS, Texaco, SiriusXM, Comcast, and AT&T, revolutionizing the way they do business. I'll hand it over to you, Tim.
Thanks so much, Sally. I appreciate it. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I really appreciate you spending time with us to talking about the next 3 ladder rungs to double your business. We're going to get a lot done in a very short period of time, and I'm very happy to have some time at the end to be able to answer some questions. When we get started with this, we're looking for things that are going to make a difference in your business. So what we're going to accomplish today is to give you some shifts in design, changing the way that you do your business now so that you can go ahead and move up and double the size of your company effectively through new account sales. My background is in a variety of industries, but to be honest, I started as a printer. I printed when I was in high school working for my dad's company. I've owned printing companies. So when I get to work with PSDA folks, not only am I somebody who understands the sales process, but I understand the challenges that are unique in your business as well. The second thing that we're going to focus on is how to tackle those shifts. If we look at the shifts in the design of our companies, we have to understand how change happens and how to make change more effective for us. And finally, what are the 5 first steps that you have to make to be able to effectively embrace this change and make it something that's institutional for your entire organization, not just something that you're working on as the leadership. So let's talk a little bit about where you are today. You probably do some things really well. I mean, let's start first of all with product. I had an opportunity to spend some time with PSDA leaders recently at a conference, and one of the things that they talked about a great deal was innovation. What's going on in their product, what's going on in their process, what's going on in their systems that's making them more effective, more efficient, more error-free, being able to deliver quickly and on time in a way that they haven't been able to before. What's going on with digital solutions and how the ability to migrate information and look at information virtually anywhere on the planet is making them indispensable to their customers. Most of us have spent a lot of time, money, and effort getting very good at our product, and you probably do that very well. And if you don't, it's a little like being the new restaurant in an outstanding town full of restaurants. If you're not good, you won't last very long. Very few companies in this competitive marketplace anymore are able to be just average. If you're not outstanding, your market and your business are in deep decline. Which also means the other thing that you do very well is passion. You care about your customers. You care about the business that you're doing. You care about your employees. You're getting passion right as part of what you do and making certain that that passion is something that you share with your customers, with your employees, with everyone. Which means as well, you're probably invested in your people. You're training them. You're spending time investing in yourself. You're on this webinar today. You're engaged in the process of making the most important asset that you have, your people, better at what they do. You probably have great people. You're probably looking for more great people. It's one of the challenges of being a business leader. So what do you probably do great now? Product, passion, people. What you probably do well or well enough is what we call service. Responding to issues, making things right when they're wrong, providing make goods, things that make a customer know that you care enough about them that when things aren't perfect, and let's be honest, in our business they're not always perfect, we will do something to fix the problem. You probably do something else that is do it well or well enough. You meet your commitments even if just barely. Look, let's face it, fast turnaround times, impeccable service, unbelievably high quality standards are becoming the norm. And what you probably do well is make certain that you meet those commitments, even if it is at the last second. So these are things that you are doing well or well enough on top of getting your product, your passion, and your people correct. But what's keeping you from doubling now? What's keeping you from being the size of firm that you really want to be? Well, the first thing, without a doubt, is you can't clone you or your key people. There's only so many people that can go around, which means only so many eyes to the quality, so many people who are focused on getting things right. You are in such a difficult situation because your most key resource is limited to yourself, and you can't create a new person. The second thing, you can't create more time. You can't invent time to think, to plan, or expand. You've got things going on all the time that are keeping you very busy. Problems that you're solving, initiatives that you put in place, strategic plans that you're guiding, client issues that you're trying to resolve. All of those things are crowding out your ability to think or plan or design a future that's substantially bigger. And the other is, the now is killing your future. You can't fix, build, and ride the same bike at the same time, which means it's a real challenge for you to have a parallel process where you have things that are improving dramatically while at the same time you're still solving the production needs of today's clients. So that's the reality. That's where you are now, and those are the things that are most likely keeping you from doubling. You've probably tried to get out of this. You've probably tried to fix this and done so in a variety of ways. I can tell you as a printer myself, I've tried all of the following to see if I could fix them. First thing I tried to do was to hire more people that would free me up to allow me to spend more time on sales, strategic planning, administration. I was even willing to sacrifice margin to put myself in a position that I could dump more of that resource in, because I recognized that an investment now would pay dividends in the future. So I tried hiring more people, more good people. I was challenged, of course, because new people bring their own ways of doing things. We spent so much of our time trying to get them to understand our approach or our philosophy, in essence trying to fix them in preparation for them to join us. That wasn't as effective as I would have liked. You probably tried increasing your marketing tools, getting your better website, putting out new campaigns, or changing the brand of your business to broaden your capabilities or to go ahead and explain your capabilities with a greater focus on differentiation. I've done that too. I've put time, money, and effort into trying to create a brand image in the marketplace that would be the great mousetrap that would draw more people to me, thinking to myself that if I promoted us better and more effectively, more qualified prospects would come to us, we would grow organically because we were such a good firm and we so desperately deserved it. You've probably also tried process improvements and punch lists. We spent a great deal of time figuring out ISO, Six Sigma, COPSI, all of whatever the modern production techniques were going to be for a manufacturing company to improve the way that we produced high-quality goods at a lower cost faster. And when I got done at that, what I figured out was I was getting better, absolutely getting better. But it was incremental. It was not a revolution I was reading, it was an evolution I was leading. And so what I wound up doing was making a little bit of improvement all the time to move up arithmetically in my size. Let me illustrate that for you. If you were a $12 million company in 2006, just for illustration purposes, and you grew $2 million, you would have grown a little bit. And if you grew $2 million for the next year, you would have grown a little less as a percentage of change, and a little less in 2008, in 2009, in 2010, in 2011. Would you have been growing? Well, of course you would have. You would have grown roughly $2 million every year. And that's a steady rate of change. But is that an outstanding rate of change? No. And in many ways, it's a declining rate of change, because what we're doing is increasing the top line, but we're decreasing our velocity. So in many seminars that I've had with printers and other industries, I have found that people who are in their business begin to settle. They settle for their rate of change because they say, well, we're still growing above last year, and our industry isn't growing that fast. In some cases, and in some segments of your market, the industry is in actual decline. So if we're able to maintain our flat line where we are, or grow just a little bit, then that's pretty good, isn't it? Isn't that enough? Well, what I also find is the entrepreneurial spirit recognizes that as an excuse for a mediocre or average performance, as opposed to a means by which to achieve an outstanding performance. Here's what they don't teach you, and I find that this is what limits us more than anything else, is our mindset. Number one, organizations are perfectly designed to get the results they are achieving. Organizations are designed perfectly to get the results they are achieving. To change results means to change your design, not necessarily just your activity. Simply adding more energy and more effort to the same doesn't get you a different outcome. It just gets you more of the same, either faster or less expensively, but it's still the same. 2, past success is the greatest trap of all. Past success is the greatest trap of all. If you have seen incremental success and you have been able to go at slightly higher than the market rate of growth for the rest of your marketplace, you might easily say to yourself, you know, we're doing pretty good. We are really weathering the storm of change in our industry effectively. But the challenge is you start to look at false positives. You start to see things that make you settle or choose to not be as successful as you could be, because you're comparing your success not against your own goals, but against the relative success of your less effective competitors. 3rd, you can't change your company or its culture as a company. You can't change your company or its culture as a company. Nobody wants to tell you that culture is something that can be effectively changed but takes an entirely different kind of effort. This isn't about reading a positive thinking book or the latest treatise on management. This is about understanding that culture follows an adoption curve. Culture follows an adoption curve, which means that if you're going to make change and you're going to be effective at making change, you have to understand and be able to manage that adoption curve. What shifts do you need to make in your design? What shifts do you have to do to your firm to be prepared to be more effective? First, you have to move from what to why. From what we do to why we do it. Secondly, you have to move from all opportunities to few opportunities. And third, you have to move out of the hero business and into the systems business. These are the shifts that you need to make. What to why, all to few, and heroes to systems. Let's talk about shift 1, what to why. When we start off, and this was originally put out by Simon Sinek, both on a TED Talk as well as a book, which is Start With Why, he talked about the fact that most of us talk about what we do. Then we talk about how we do it, and very rarely do we talk about why we do it. What are we trying to do is much different than why do we choose to do it. Human beings, and in particular millennials, are starting to understand that the why ultimately drives both the how and the what, how effective you might be. Simon Sinek, in his original work, has a great discussion about Apple Computer, in which they basically decide they're going to be in the design business, not in the technology business. Technology is a business that everyone else is going to be in, They're going to be in the simple, elegant design business. And the technology will come as a part of that. What business are you in? Or more importantly, why are you in that business? Not just what business problem are you solving, but why do you care to solve that problem? When we look at from the what, the how, to the why, we first look at where we're going to start with change. First change you have to consider is you. Why do you do what you want to do? Certainly economics has something to do with this. We all work in terms of a paycheck. We have some financial incentives. But why did you pick this business? Why do you continue to solve on these problems? Why do you continue to have passion for your clients the way that you do? Why is germane? Why do your people do what they do? We're in a marketplace where we're sub 4.8% unemployment. All of us are having a challenging time finding and sourcing ideal personnel. And because we're having a hard time sourcing those ideal personnel, we find those that we have with us now to be very precious. We also sometimes settle for them and are unwilling to try to make a change to a better player because we are fearful of what it would take to go get someone new. Why do your people do what they're doing? And why does your market do what it's doing? Why is there a focus on the digital work that's coming out in the marketplace? Distributed delivery. Why has the marketplace moved to so close to real time? And finally, why are your stakeholders betting on you? Now, stakeholders are more than shareholders. They're certainly your vendors, your partners, your suppliers. But why do the stakeholders depend on you? These whys are a lot about solving and thinking about the three business problems that everyone faces. Now, business problems, when we talk about business problems at Hunt Big Sales, we talk about time, money, and risk. Time, money, and risk. The reason we talk about that is that we recognize that these are the problems that senior executives are trying to solve. They're not trying to solve a customer service problem or a delivery problem. They're solving problems related to time, money, or risk. And one of the things we have to get in our head is what time, money, and risk are not. Time is not service. What does that mean? It's not how fast do I get something done. It's not a matter of, is my customer service Johnny on the spot? Time is not just about service. Time is really about time to market for them, time to solve other issues related to materials that you're not involved in, where you fit in the supply chain, what business problem you're solving, and is it big enough to be solved in such a way that you become elemental to the time equation for them. Secondly, money is not price. Money is about value. When you're talking to prospective customers and you're talking about money, you're really talking about more than just what is the price difference between you and your competitor. Money has a lot to do with how they equate the value. Who's solving the problem now, and are they satisfied with what they're receiving? How much difference is the price between you and your competitor? And third, how much belief and faith do they have in your promise about how much difference your difference will make? When we get to boil down to where money is really just about price, then we deserve to be treated like a commodity, because functionally we have become a commodity. And finally, risk is not just about quality. Risk is not just about quality. When we look at the business of all the elements of PSDA, we know that the risk is about brand, the risk is about reputation, the risk is ultimately much larger than just the quality of the materials that we provide on behalf of our clients. So when we look at this, we have to recognize that time is not service and money is not about price and risk isn't about quality. We have to be executive problem solvers. People who can really look at what a senior executive's real problem is, what business problem they're trying to solve, how they're going to solve it differently using us, and how much difference we can make for them. That's shift one, which means if we can change our dialogue, we know that we get sent to whom we sound like. You get sent to whom you sound like. When you're talking about serious business problems, those issues that affect real-time money or risk, that have financial implications or brand implications, you're going to be dealing at a senior executive level. When we shift from what to why, we are escalating and elevating our dialogue to a point that we can spend time talking to serious senior decision makers. So, have you made the shift? How far are you so far on this? Do you folks talk about the why and the business problems as they are? Well, let's move to the second shift. Shift two is from all to few. Just because someone should buy from you does not mean that they will. Just because someone should buy from you does not mean that they will. We have found time and time again the companies that focused on their product have done a great job of building a masterpiece that no one will see. They have a great product and they're surprised that no one is beating their door down to buy from them. Unfortunately, this is because they haven't done anything to, number two, define their market. You have to define your market and you can change your leverage through focus. Now, I spent a great deal of time working with PSDA members in the last 6 months. And it's been interesting as I've talked to them time and again, they reference their need to stay focused on the things that they're most interested in. But when I examine their willingness to turn down business that is on the periphery of their core skills, they still retreat to a mentality of scarcity. Their answer is, there's only so much business out there, and I have to take things that we don't do as well or don't do the very best, because if I don't, there will be no way for us to grow. We know that you have to change this from all opportunities and all comers to just a few, the few that you can do the very best and do outstanding work for. And three, if you're going to move from all to few, you have to get out of the danger zone of black hole prospects and toxic clients. Now, we have all had black hole prospects and toxic clients in the past. And we'll spend a little bit of time talking about them. But I would say that for me, black hole prospects are those folks who constantly are asking for quote after quote, opportunity and information beyond compare. They want more details and more information, functionally, that you're giving what feels a lot like free consulting to. But at the end of the day, they don't really buy anything from you. The other is the toxic client, someone with unfair demands, who actually, when you examine them on an activity-based costing rationale, are not even profitable for your firm. They damage your reputation internally with your own personnel. Your people don't want to work on their programs because there will be no satisfaction in the end. And at the end of the day, all you could possibly do is disappoint them. But we keep working with them. And the reason we work with them, because they pay bills. And we are fearful that if they stop paying bills, that'll put us out of business. Even though we know if we could find one good client, we would rather replace this current account than simply keep them as part of our portfolio. And finally, what characteristics of the market should you hunt rather than just respond to? This is always a challenge for anyone in any business, but particularly in yours, because the marketplace is a push-pull marketplace. We're out aggressively seeking new business, but also through reputation and our own marketing efforts, we're constantly being called upon to examine possibilities, new opportunities, new business that we should quote on or not quote on. So what are the things that you absolutely should go out and look for versus those things that you're just going to respond to? We know that a lot of folks in the marketplace, and many of them are your competitors, are happy to chase everything that comes in. They look at all business as having roughly equal value. They look at their margins and they think to themselves, incremental business means an ability to spread my overhead across a broader base, diminish my risk, put myself in a position where we can basically weather the storm until a new good piece of business comes along. And that's good, and that makes some sense. We also have some folks who said, you know what, there are a few things I'm going to say absolutely no to. We're going to go ahead and build a target filter or a prospect scan that will keep us out of trouble and make certain that we're not spending our time on accounts that don't make sense for us. And then there are folks who even broaden that even more, and they get into a position where they say, you know what, we're going to stay focused on A accounts, B accounts, and C accounts, and maybe a few D accounts. But that'll probably give us about access to around 80% of the marketplace. And by getting rid of the other 20%, we'll follow the Pareto rule in some perverse form, and we'll be focused on that 80% and be able to do a higher margin of work and avoid the pitfalls that our competitors run into. We go into a different approach that says, you know what, there's another group that you can work with, which is the niche market. And we've seen many folks in our industry who've gone into the niche market. They dominate in a small area, what we would look at the blue dots. We say, you know what, they're going to be outstanding at developing a reputation, at creating a market demand for them, and they're going to be a niche player with some really, really good clients to work with. But when we get to the greatest potential of all, we look at the yellow dots. We look at the 4 to 5% of the marketplace that is truly worthy of your very best efforts. We mean your senior executives, your senior leadership team, a hunt pursuit team who can go right after the big opportunity, goes after maybe 5 or 10 accounts a year, recognizes that that's where the market rate of growth really doubles, that it's not in selling a few less accounts, it's in selling to only a few accounts. So have you made this shift? How far are you? Have you really targeted and built a target filter or a prospect scan that eliminates 90, 95% of the market from your high effort, high energy targeting? That's the shift. It's number 2, moving from all of the marketplace to just a few accounts that we chase. Let's talk about the third shift, is moving from heroes versus systems. Heroes versus systems. We have found that you always need heroes, but if you celebrate firefighters, you get fires. That's one of the first things I learned when I was at a printing company, is I had a gentleman who was a pressman who could fix any crisis that we had and developed a great reputation for being somebody who could manage the crisis problem that we had related to, production or quality, no matter what it was. But we started to celebrate all the fires that he was solving instead of building a process that would keep us from having fires. We needed a system that was going to make us more effective in the long run, but we were spending our time building a system to applaud his efforts. Systems are about continually reducing the need for the extraordinary. It's about removing the firefighter from the system so that you don't have a crisis that you're chasing each and every day. The third is to understand what systems you need. What systems you need. By shifting from being about just people to being about systems, you put yourself in a better position. We look at 3 questions. What are the expectations you have set for your company and the people inside of it? Are they reasonable? Are they intelligent? Are they aggressive? What are the processes that you have in place that allow good people to perform in an excellent manner? And finally, do we have the right people who can use those processes to achieve extraordinary outcomes? So what kinds of systems do you need? As we talked about before, we spent time probably in product, but what do you have in marketing? What systems do you need? Well, if you remember from the second shift, the first thing that we have to do is move from all accounts that we pursue to a few, to having a tight message, a message that makes sense to our marketplace. I have a little cheat that I use when I'm looking at my message, and I'd like you to write this down if you can. To know whether your message is effective, ask yourself 3 questions. Question number 1, is it provocative? Is it provocative? Is this a message that will take someone outside of their current situation and make them contemplate a much better future? If your message doesn't make your reader or your consumer contemplate a much better future, it's not provocative. Secondly, is it compelling? Is it a message that when somebody hears it, they think to themselves, you know what? I think that could actually work. Their approach could actually get me to that provocative future that I was hoping for. That's the second question. The third question, is it defensible? Is it defensible? One thing that we know is in large account sales, nobody makes the purchase decision alone. Certainly not if you're going to be shifting a large piece of business versus a single quote, or if you're looking to become the agency of record or a firm that gets the lion's share of the revenue. For those, we know that you're going to wind up having a group of people involved in the purchase, what we refer to as the buyer's table. And that buyer's table has to have a defensible solution, because at some point in time, change will have to be explained, and they're going to have to go out to someone and tell them, why did they choose you over the solution that they were already picking? So the first thing we have to look at is our marketing. What systems do you need? Secondly, we have to look at our sales. Are we focusing our energies and efforts on activities or on outcomes? I would much rather see someone pursuing a smaller number of accounts, say 15 or 20 accounts, with a clear understanding of who the buyers are, what the buyer process is, what the potential pitfalls are between us and winning, and what the key performance indicators that we will have to cross, or the threshold that we will have to run through to be able to be successful. What I know is if we're able to do those things with a smaller number of large accounts, we will in the end be more effective. What about your operational systems? Everything in the marketplace these days seems to be moving towards speed. People don't understand that we don't buy technology for technology purposes. We buy technology for speed purposes. We also buy it for accuracy, which is, by the way, a proxy for speed. One of the things that somebody told me when I first got into printing was, so let me get this straight, we don't have time to do it right, but we have time to do it over. We don't have time to do it over. So getting it accurate the first time, the question is often about our operational capability and our technology. What about finance? When we look at the ultimate decisions that are going to be made related to the company and the kind of business we'll take, the bids that we'll put forward, the opportunities that we will try to secure, more often than not, our finance team has to partner with us to build out a system that will effectively allow us to price and to be in a winning position. Do you have a finance system beyond just ERP or some other enterprise system that gives you insight into where you're at? Do you have one that helps you understand strategically where pricing needs to be and where you can be effective in terms of adding on over time additional goods or services to increase things like margin and volume? And finally, what are you doing in the terms of research and development or in your service? What systems do you have that provide you with an early warning system if for some reason you're not satisfying a client, or if technology is bypassing you in the marketplace and putting you in a position where you can no longer be competitive? Have you set aside the necessary funds so that you can do the R&D necessary to be in a position to win longer term as the marketplace continues to change in demands in technology and ultimately delivery systems? So what systems do you need? You need them all. You need marketing systems, sales systems, operation systems, finance systems, service and R&D. All of those things are the third shift. Have you made that shift already? And how far are you? Well, let's talk about how you make these changes. One of the things that's a challenge in any company is something that Peter Drucker said. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Your organizational culture will either be the greatest limiting factor to your ability to grow, or it will be your greatest spur to the level of growth that you achieve. And the challenge is, every time you go to make change, you have to run up against inertia. What has gone before, what has happened in the past, the things that didn't work, the things that did work. It's mind-blowing how much effect history has on our future. We look at this in terms of making change around the law of diffusion of innovation. The law of diffusion of innovation. Now, this first came about when technology was being introduced. Companies like Apple and IBM, et cetera, they realized that when they were making change into the marketplace, there was a small group of people who got very excited when they did something new. And that group was 2.5% of the marketplace, and it was the innovators. And the innovators would basically buy on to anything that was new as long as it was new and cool. After the innovators was another 13.5% of the group called the early adopters. The early adopters had looked at what the innovators were doing, allowed the first version or two to come out so that the real pain had been gone through, that the bleeding edge of technology had moved and dulled to the leading edge of technology so that they would not suffer from it. Then you had the early followers. These three groups added up to about 50% of the marketplace. Then we looked at the late followers and finally the laggards. When we looked at the law of diffusion of innovation, one of the things that Hunt Big Sales figured out is this is the same way your culture will change inside your company. There will be a small group of people who are in the wartime general side of your world, who are willing to make the change that you want, who are excited about the possibility, and are willing and aggressively willing to go after and make a difference as quickly as possible so that you can achieve what you want to get done. And then will always be a group of people who are waiting in the back, hoping to see what happens and then make a decision as to whether or not they'll join you. Now, I don't know about you, but when I grew up in this business, when I wanted to understand how change was going to happen inside my company, or whether employee satisfaction was where it was supposed to be, or what was really going to be the opinion of personnel as I made some policy difference, I'd go out and talk to the Smokers Mafia. Now, the Smokers Mafia to me was always the group of guys who were out in the back of the production center who would go out on break and have a cigarette. Now, I never smoked, but I'd go out and I was accepted by them because they were a disenfranchised group who was smoking, and it was okay for me to come out and hang out with them. And I would just get early insight as to what their thoughts were going to be about anything that was going on. I'd float ideas by them. I'd find out if there was something that was negative or that was going to go on. See, a lot of people look at this law of diffusion of innovation and they think to themselves, I'm willing to go talk to a small portion of that change agent group to see if inside my company I can get some people to follow me along and try to help me and support me in making a difference, in making a big change to the systems, the process, the people, the way we do things. Then they say, okay, after that, I'll get out of the cost business of trying to figure out what it's going to take to do it, and I'll go to my stabilizers. And those folks will come along once they see the success of whatever we've put in place. And that will get us a long ways. And then finally, the last group, as we go ahead and put things in place, they'll come along finally. They're the institutionalizers. They're the ones who will make this the way it should be. And we look at that acceptance, and I know as a CEO I've done it myself for years, which is we say to the group, I tell you what, we're going to go ahead and make these big changes now, and some will follow and some won't. Some will make it and some won't. But we're going to let time be the arbiter of our success. And as long as we stay together, we'll be able to get where we want to go. What they don't understand is you can accelerate the curve by managing the communication. You can get to this group of people by going out to your internal marketplace and starting to aggressively pursue them with your new ideas. We know that if you're going to make change, this is a lot about your decisions as leadership and management team and the communication choices that you make as you go forward, which goes back to the shift from what to why. Why is your organization trying to grow? What are you trying to get done? Why is the company changing? To make these changes, you need to look at the law of diffusion of innovation, from what to why, from all to few, and from heroes to systems. You need to look at each part of that and say, how am I going to affect that change in a way that is going to make sense to the people who are working with me? How do you make these changes? Well, certainly work through the law of diffusion of innovation that I just referenced. Identify your resources by segment. You know, they always say if you're going to eat an elephant, you need to eat it a bite at a time. We've covered a lot of areas in which systems could change, processes could change, market focus could change, what we're selling can change. You need to identify a few changes that make sense and make those changes only. Fourth, you need to create goals and teams and steps to make that happen. And finally, you have to make certain that you have the handoffs already built, meaning the steps and the process in place so you can shift from one group to another, from the now that you have across the chasm of change to the future that you're pursuing. This is how to make these changes. Your next 3 ladder rungs to double your business absolutely demand that you do things differently, that you have to stay focused on those things which will get you out of incremental change and get you into dramatic change, that you have to design your organization to get to what you want, that you have to focus on the why, the few accounts and opportunities that you're going to change or that you're going to pursue, and the systems that you want in place instead of just the heroes of yesterday that brought you as far as they have. As we're closing this out and we're preparing for questions, I just wanted to comment that as a member of PSDA and an attendee to this, we have an opportunity for you to join us on site here in Indianapolis for a 2-day workshop called Your Biggest Deal Ever. This is free to you, although we typically charge about $3,000 for this 2-day seminar. And it's about how do you pursue, hunt, and bring in your biggest deal ever. Your natural inclination would be to send the head of sales or one of your salespeople. I will tell you from history, that is an effective way to join us. But as a CEO, if you happen to be on this call, I can highly recommend that this is about a shift in your mindset to being a fast growth company, and how do you move your culture, not just through the biggest deal ever, but changing to a series of your biggest deals ever. You'll see at the bottom of the page, you go to huntbigsales.com/golden-ticket/. You will also be receiving an email after this presentation with a link to this presentation, which will also have the link to the golden ticket as well. With that, I appreciate your time and be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And so we are open to answer questions at this time.
Tim, we had a question come in that said, what was the second point in the, I believe it was the innovation messaging. So number 1 was it is provocative. What was that second point again?
Right, it's compelling. So when your messaging goes out for marketing or branding, it needs to have 3 things for it. It needs to be provocative, compelling, and defensible. Provocative is it has to promise a future significantly better than the now. Compelling, it has to be a message that someone says, you know what, I believe that could actually be done. So it has to have legitimacy, and that's what makes it compelling. And defensible, It has to be something that someone believes they could share with others and they would believe it too.
Great, thank you. If
You bet.
anyone has any questions, feel free to put those into the question box on the right side of your webinar tool. Give everyone just another minute or so. We don't have any other questions. So it looks like you answered everything, Tim. We'll just give everyone another minute. All right. Looks like folks are saying thank you, Tim, so they appreciate you joining us. And of course, I appreciate you joining us as well. And I want to thank everyone in the audience today as well for joining us. Feel free to take a few minutes to complete the online evaluation that pops up when you leave. And we thank you in advance for your feedback. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you.